The mystery of unidentified drones in the skies over New Jersey now expanding to nearby states. Sightings in New York, Connecticut, even Maryland's governor mentioning some. Federal officials, meantime, have tried to reassure the public and lawmakers, saying the drones aren't a threat. However, the lack of evidence to support that claim isn't doing much to calm nerves.
I think it's potentially our own government that may be doing some surveillance or counterterrorism, but then be honest, because these are flying outside of the regulations. They are violating the FAA policy in terms of altitude and the time that they're operating. So then that leaves me to believe that it could only be our government unless it's a foreign nexus, which I think we would all hate to believe could be the case.
That's Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, who said she sat in on a briefing with Homeland Security earlier this week. Meantime, her colleague from New Jersey now suggesting local law enforcement should actually be allowed to shoot those drones down.
I've made this very clear to the FBI, to Homeland Security, and the FAA, the agencies chiefly responsible for monitoring drone activity. They must immediately disclose more information to the public. Today, I'm also urging federal law enforcement agencies, which are led by the FBI and DHS, to allow state and local law enforcement to deploy assets that can safely take down drones that shouldn't be in the air right now.
Omar Jimenez is following all these latest developments for us from New Jersey.
There has to be some explanation to the public for all this increased activity, and they must do so now.
And yet, there hasn't been, even as the federal government says there's no evidence of any national security or public safety threats. And there have been growing calls for answers as drone sightings continue in New Jersey and now also the New York metropolitan area.
They must immediately disclose more information to the public. It's totally and completely unacceptable. New Jersey can't become the Wild West of drone activity. No state can become the Wild West of drone activity.
It's now been a month since some of the first drones were reported near a military installation in northern New Jersey. Since then, there have been dozens of reported sightings, as some federal officials throw cold water on some of those reports.
We have not been able to, and neither have state or local law enforcement authorities, corroborate any of the reported visual sightings. It appears that many of the reported sightings are actually manned aircraft that are being operated lawfully.
And in a joint statement, the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI said in part they're working to confirm whether the reported drone flights are actually drones or are instead manned aircraft or otherwise inaccurate sightings. Despite attempts by officials to calm concerns, videos of reported drones in the skies are still popping up all over social media.
Wow, they just passed the truck. Yeah, I've never seen that before.
Including these from New Jersey Senator Andy Kim as he went out with local police Thursday night. Former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan also posting his own possible drone sighting, writing on X, "I personally witnessed what appeared to be dozens of large drones in the sky above my residence. I do not know if this increasing activity over our skies is a threat to public safety or national security." There was even a downed drone that was reported in Morris County, New Jersey, but it was later revealed to be a hobby or toy drone. All the while, without a definitive explanation, questions have filled the vacuum. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy writing to President Joe Biden expressing concern about the reported drone sightings and asking for more federal resources, saying in part, existing laws limit the ability of state and local law enforcement to counter UAS or unmanned aircraft systems. It has become apparent that more resources are needed to fully understand what is behind this activity. New York Governor Kathy Hochul confirming that drones have also been spotted in New York, posting on X, "At this time, there's no evidence that these drones pose a public safety or national security threat."
And our thanks to Omar Jimenez for that report. Colonel Cedric Layton joining me now, retired U.S. Air Force officer and, of course, CNN military analyst. Colonel Layton, always good to have you with us. So as we look at where things stand today, we just saw and heard from Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, who represents Staten Island here in New York City, who said she thinks this could be the government because what she has been shown and what she knows to this point is some of these drones are violating FAA regulations, but it doesn't seem that anything's happening with that. So she believes that it could be some sort of a counterterrorism or surveillance effort by the government. Does that seem like this could be what we're seeing here?
It's certainly a possibility, Erica, and it's great to be with you. There are certain things that the government does. They will test their technical capabilities to include their drones and also test the ability of their drones to work together in a coordinated way in order to either counter a particular action, like a particular drone attack, for example, a hypothetical drone attack, or they will, use these as a way to exercise command and control or monitor certain activities. So without knowing much more, it is a possible explanation of what's going on here. There are other possible explanations, but that is certainly one that could very well hold true.
What do you think some of the other possible explanations are at this point?
So there is the possibility of perhaps a company testing some of its drones for delivery purposes, like a delivery service like a UPS or something like that. There could be the possibility of, some other efforts, in terms of mapping, going in and mapping particular areas and determining kind of like a Google Maps, but from the sky. There are certain other things like that. And then on the more nefarious side, there is certainly a possibility that I wouldn't completely discount, although I don't have any evidence for it yet, that a foreign entity is using our airspace to fly drones in and to conduct intelligence operations in. So all of these are possibilities, and without any further evidence, we really don't know which one is the most accurate of those.
So to your point on both of those, number one, if it was a company testing a drone or doing mapping, that's a very easy thing for the government to say, oh, hey, don't worry about it. Google's working on its mappings, or UPS is testing shipping capabilities with drones. That hasn't happened.
That's right. And that's why that particular theory holds less water at the moment, because there is no government explanation for what's going on. As far as we know, no FAA approval for a mission like that. And that is exactly what would be needed by a Google or a FedEx or something like that to conduct operations of that type. So that makes that particular theory a bit weaker because we don't know of anything like that. And if it is the case, then the government should definitely get out in front of this and say that's what's happening.
There's also, I know, concern over copycats. When it comes to potential foreign actors, the DoD said there was zero evidence when it was raised that there was an Iranian mothership offshore, an idea that was raised by a New Jersey congressman. And John Miller, my colleague John Miller, noting earlier that for either Iran or Russia to be behind this, they really don't have the capacity in this moment, given what's happening. I know there are concerns about China. Do you see any hallmarks here that this could be perhaps some Chinese involvement?
Well, in that particular area, yes, there is a possibility. There is one Chinese company that has developed a flying car, and basically what it is designed to do is it's a bit bigger than a normal drone. And in at least one picture that somebody has purported to take from New Jersey, there's some similarities with the flying car prototype and what they saw in the sky. Now, the image is blurry. There are a lot of things, that need to be done to determine the veracity of that. But it is certainly possible that, something like that could be done by a foreign entity. Now, the one problem with that is how long can these drones fly? What are their legs, as we call it in the aviation business? And if they don't have the refueling range or the operational range to conduct operations like this, that makes it less likely unless these drones are launched from either within the U.S. or immediately offshore.
We're still stuck with so many questions tonight, despite even some of these briefings that lawmakers have had. They're coming out of them saying that they need the government to be a little bit more clear. We have the president-elect also posting on social media that it's time for more information, saying this couldn't really be happening without the government's knowledge, and otherwise shoot them down. We know that has its own set of issues. I'm curious, as you watch all of this, what is your biggest question tonight? How do you think the government could clear this up for everyone?
Yeah, well, I think it should be a whole of government approach. And I think the intelligence and law enforcement agencies should be examining every possibility, even some far-fetched theories, and just in order to make sure that that's not exactly what's happening here. We do know that, when we look at cyber attacks, which are somewhat analogous to what drones are being used for, they do tend to focus on critical infrastructure and military installations. And the same kind of thing is happening, at least with some of these drone sightings. At least that's what's being reported. So my biggest question is, Is this an intelligence operation from another side? That would be the most significant thing. Obviously, if it's a sabotage operation of some type, that would then up the ante from a national security standpoint. But my supposition is if it is a foreign actor, it's more of an intelligence operation. If it is something domestic, that somebody is doing, they need to get, the FAA needs to basically step in and get them in line to make sure that all aviation safety protocols are being followed, because that's a big issue, especially with a huge airport like Newark International right there.
Yeah, and this being such a densely populated area of the country as well, the tri-state area where these sightings have been reported. Colonel Cedric Leighton, always appreciate your insight and your expertise. Thank you.
You bet, Erica.